I'm thinking about where IBM is in the world right now as you're transitioning, and we've got that Red Hat. We've got AI on the cusp of something amazing. Obviously, maybe we're already there. And around here at cocktail parties, I usually just throw out hybrid cloud, and everybody just nods and just says they come over. Actually, they come around me because I use that term. But is it a transition period for IBM right now, more than, is it a company of the future more than where we are right now, would you say?
Look, Joe, I think we're already a company of the future. I've been on many times with you guys, and we've always talked about, as we've reinvented the portfolio, while we still do lots of mission critical work, you mentioned hybrid cloud. It's just a fact of life, and it's chapter 2 for the cloud for all clients. You would have seen we made a big announcement with Vodafone. You'll see another big French bank after the bell tonight. And it's clients that say, look, I want to move to the cloud, but economically, and even what makes sense, some of it I'll leave just as it is on my premise. Some I want my own private cloud right on my premise, and the rest I'll put in a public cloud. It's that simple, and that's what we're doing.
Has been tough for technology in general, but especially for IBM. That's what I mean about whether you're in a, not a pause, but in a calm before what could be a time when you really see, Red Hat will be accretive when in the second year.
No, so when we did Red Hat, it will be 200 basis points to our revenue growth, as we've talked about. That's right. Accretive in the second year. Free cash flow, though, $1 billion. And so it's really a good move for all of IBM because it's 200 basis points to all of IBM when we talk revenue growth. And when you look about where IBM is right now in this reinvention, what I would say is now it's up to us to consistently perform, because you've really seen pretty much almost 50% of the portfolio has moved into these new areas while we do the mission critical work for clients in the other areas.
Are you taking such a firm position on regulation for a lot of your peers because it doesn't affect you quite as much?
No, actually, it's an interesting question. I'll tell you how it impacts us, and I think it almost impacts everybody. I just left a discussion on this, is because every government right now, the issue is privacy of consumer data. And so every government is itching to regulate, and I think the risk we all have is that there's a great overreaction, and the casualty is the whole digital economy, where really what we have to protect is consumer privacy. And that's consent, opt-out, ability to delete. And that is what I would call almost like precision medicine, precision regulation. So I'm pretty vocal about that.
Now it's something we need to decide that's just what reminds me when the brokerage business said, you know what? We have a new law. We're going to have. It's going to be that we put our clients first before we put ourselves. I would have thought that we started with privacy should have been sacrosanct right from the very beginning.
It is to us. I mean, for 108 years, we were just talking about it. We're 108 years old, and we have always lived by that view that we exist because clients trust us with data. So I think every company now has to do that when everyone's looking to benefit from it. If you're going to benefit from it, you have to live by those rules.
I wanted to ask you about big data, and maybe we can run a clip in just a moment. But Ruth Porat was on a panel that I did this morning. CFO of Google, and we're talking about the competitive landscape and basically how maybe the big guys are going to control the market more and more, in part because of this idea that big data is the new oil, and that if you don't have access to the oil, if you're a kid in a garage, it's actually much harder to compete against the big guys. Why don't we try to run that clip, and I'm curious what you think.
The supply of oil is finite. Data is actually more like sunlight than it is like oil, because it is actually unlimited. We keep generating new data. It can be applied to multiple applications at one time. So it is not actually like oil. It is like sunshine, and we keep using it and regenerating.
Do you buy that argument? Do you buy the argument that data is effectively unlimited and that everybody will ultimately be able to have access to it?
Yes and no. So I think it was probably 7 years ago I started using that oil metaphor, but it was for a different reason. It wasn't about limited, not limited. I think the real point of that metaphor is value goes to those who actually refine it, not to those who just hold it. And just like with countries, poor countries have oil. And so that's what that meant. I think the future, and again, I just left a discussion on this, people say, well, gee, if as an example, China has no privacy rules and has all this data, do they win in AI? Having a lot of data for the current state of AI is useful, but there's more and more AI innovation being done that learns with less data. So I don't call this a war one way or the other that's over. This idea that our technologies are going to learn with less data, that's what we're working on and others are, it's going to make a big difference here. And so don't set this just on a lot. Now, All that said, we did a calculation that the world only collects less than 1% of the data it actually gives off. So there is a ton more out there. It's not collected and it's not used. So both sides are right.
And you were excited about tax reform and repatriation and all the stuff that we were so excited about last year.
Yeah.
In Davos.
But you'll remember it was always a headwind for us, right? But I was excited about it.
But it wasn't a one-shot deal.
Right.
The corporate tax rate hasn't gone up. Are you still positive about the overall macro environment in the United States?
Look, I think there's another side on tax reform of why haven't we seen as much prolonged sustained?
Right.
Again, another discussion we just had. Yes, there's been tax reform, but we have not paid as much attention to me, the societal issues. There's this trust headwind you just mentioned with data, but this skills crisis is a real issue. So you may take and have capital, but if we don't help bridge these gaps on skills, I think this is what you're missing. And, fourth industrial revolution is the topic here. Every past industrial revolution had a great technology, but then it was accompanied by both physical infrastructure and societal infrastructure to spread the benefits evenly. That's what we haven't paid attention to.
Ginni, I realize that because it's only a few hours before your earnings call, there's a lot of things that you can't say.
Yeah.
But I don't want to feel foolish for not asking you something. So let me take a stab at it this way. There is this theory out there that we have seen a peak in big spending on technology because we are potentially headed into an economic slowdown or even a recession, depending on who you ask. Do you believe in that view of the world?
I should, by the way, I was going to be on tomorrow. You guys had some scheduling things, so you'll get my CFO later tonight. I was going to be with you tomorrow otherwise. Here's what I see clients starting to change their decision making, and I think that answers your question. I see a remix in the kinds of things they want to do from not just innovation, but balanced it with productivity. Far more. So this remix moves. I see a shorter duration. That reflects people having uncertainty, saying, look, I'll make a decision for a shorter period of time that's out there. One thing I think that's the same that's worth calling out is what you guys started the whole discussion with, which is there's still this focus on, if I just broadly use the word data, AI, automation, it really can improve their business. And so that stays the same, durations start changing, and you see the remix, which, by the way, often benefits us when there's a remix to productivity, because we work on both sides.